You've seen it, right? An AI that can compose a beautiful piece of music, but then gets completely stumped by a simple logic puzzle? It's kind of frustrating. Well, today we're diving into a new framework called Reflexion that might just fix that. The whole idea is to give AI something it's been missing, the ability to actually learn from its own mistakes, just like we do.
So let's start with the big question, the one that's been bugging researchers for a while now. How is it that these massive, powerful language models can get trapped in a loop, making the exact same mistake again and again?
Okay, so before we jump into the really cool solution, we've got to understand why this is such a hard problem to solve in the first place. Let's take a look at the traditional way of doing things.
This slide really lays it all out. See, the old way of teaching an AI is kind of like trying to fix a car's steering by totally rebuilding the engine from scratch. You have to fine-tune the model's weights, which you can think of as its fundamental programming. It takes forever and costs a ton of money. And the feedback the AI gets, it's just a simple number, like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But that's not how we learn, is it? We mess up, we think, whoops, probably shouldn't do that again, and then we try something new.
And that right there is the key insight. What if, instead of teaching AI like a machine, we could get it to learn a little more like a human?
And that's where Reflexion comes in. The idea is just brilliantly simple. Instead of rewriting the AI's core code, its weights, you just give it feedback in plain language. You literally give it an inner monologue, a little voice in its head that can look at a failure and figure out a new strategy.
This quote from the research paper just nails it. This isn't about brute force and retraining the whole model. It's about linguistic feedback, or what they call verbal reinforcement. It's a totally different way of thinking about how an AI can learn.
So how does this inner voice actually work? Let's pop the hood and see what's really going on inside this reflection framework. It's basically a team of 3 different models working in sync. First, you've got the actor. That's the doer, the one actually trying to get the task done. Then there's the evaluator, who's like the grader, just scoring how well the actor did. And finally, you have the star of the show, the self-reflection model. This is the inner monologue, the part that steps back and figures out what went wrong. And here's how that team works together in this really smart loop. Step 1, the actor gives it a shot. Step 2, the evaluator gives it a grade. Now, if it fails, this is the important part, the self-reflection model kicks in and essentially writes a note to itself saying, okay, here is precisely what I did wrong. That note gets stored as a memory, and then the actor gets to try again, only this time it has the benefit of that memory to avoid making the same mistake.
And this memory system is really the secret sauce. The AI has a short-term memory, which is kind of like a scratch pad for what it's doing in the moment. But those reflections, the lessons learned from failure, those get filed away in its long-term memory. It's basically building up this library of its own experiences, a whole collection of don't do this again notes that it can draw on forever.
All right, the theory is super elegant, I love it, but does it actually work in practice? Let's get to the fun part, the results.
And yeah, the results are pretty amazing. They put this to the test on a really complex decision-making task. The normal AI, it got stuck in those loops we talked about and only succeeded about 75% of the time. But the AI with Reflexion, it shot all the way up to a 97% success rate. That is a huge, huge jump. This is the solution to that getting stuck problem, right here in ACT.
Now that's really impressive on its own, but this next part is what made my jaw drop. The researchers decided to test this on one of the absolute hardest tasks for an AI, writing computer code that actually works and is free of bugs.
The agent using Reflexion passed the test 91% of the time. Just let that number sink in for a second. On one of the toughest coding benchmarks that exists, it was almost perfect. That is a massive leap forward. And to give you some perspective on that 91%, look at this. Standard GPT-4, one of the most powerful and capable AIs on the entire planet, gets this right only 80% of the time. Just by adding this inner monologue, this reflection capability, the researchers boosted its performance by 11 full percentage points and set a new state-of-the-art record.
So what does this all mean for the big picture? I mean, this isn't just a tiny tweak. This could be pointing towards a completely new future for how we build and train artificial intelligence.
So let's wrap up with why this is such a potential game changer. First, it's a whole new way of thinking, verbal reinforcement learning. Second, it's way more efficient, no more crazy expensive model retraining. Third, it makes AI agents way more adaptable. They can learn from just a handful of attempts. And this last one, This might be the biggest deal of all. It makes the AI more interpretable. For the first time, we can literally read the AI's thought process and understand why it made the choices it did. That is huge for building systems we can actually trust.
All of this leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. We're on the cusp of moving from AIs that just spot patterns to AIs that can actually reflect, learn, and improve all on their own. So I'll just leave you with this question. What kind of new possibilities open up when our machines can truly learn from their own experience?